Wall Street obviously nervous. Does that make lawmakers here in Washington nervous about the risk of a debt crisis? Let's go to Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming. He's joining us live. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Wolf.
Are you willing to compromise with the Democrats in order to avert a potential default on Tuesday?
Well, my bottom line is I think we actually need to prevent a default and cut the spending. I mean, those are our problems. The bottom line of the president's, though, is different. He said the only thing that is his bottom line is raising the debt ceiling beyond the next election. And I think you ought to be focused on today's issue, the jobs, the economy, the debt, and the spending. He ought to be embracing.
Yeah, but they don't want to put the country through this ordeal again in 6 months or in 8 months. You understand that, right?
Well, I know that the president he wants to take the eyes of America off of the economy and the lack of jobs and the 9.2% unemployment that we have. You know, for the times they've raised the debt ceiling, Wolf, it's on an average about every 8 months. The president is asking for the largest increase in the debt ceiling ever and for one of the longest periods of time ever. That's not a responsible way to do it. Our problem is, as a nation, we're going broke, and it is the debt, not just the debt ceiling. It is this $14 trillion debt. And if we have a downgrade of our bonds and the interest rates go up, it's going to be much more because of the debt than a debt ceiling issue.
It may already be too late for that downgrade, given what's happened over these past several weeks. So what do you know about what's happening in the other chamber, the House of Representatives? Because it looks like the vote was supposed to be at least a half an hour or so ago. They've had to delay it, and everyone is suggesting that the Speaker does not have all of his Republicans in line to get the 216 votes needed to pass his proposal. Is that what you're hearing?
Well, I was on the Senate floor a little earlier speaking about this very issue. I believe they are going to have a vote tonight. I believe it will pass the House. It needs to pass the House so we can prevent a default and at the same time actually cut spending. That's the key. That we don't need to raise taxes, we need to cut spending. That's where we ought to be focused. You know, I don't think you balance the budget by raising taxes when it's 9.2% unemployment. We need to get people back to work, Wolf, and we ought to be focused on that. So we need to get beyond this by passing the Boehner proposal, getting it to the Senate, passing it there. And what's the president do? He goes on television, he makes a speech, he does a veto threat. But the president doesn't have his own plan. He ought to be leading.
But you know, even if the Boehner proposal passes the House tonight, it doesn't have the votes to even come up for a serious vote in the Senate. It'll be tabled right away. 51 Democrats, 2 independents who vote with the Democrats, and a few Republicans are already saying they're going to vote to table this resolution. So what do you do next, Senator, after the Boehner proposal goes down? Are you going to support Harry Reid's proposal, which does not include any tax increases?
I think that the only thing that can pass the House is the Boehner plan. And as a result,
it can pass the House, but what about the Senate? It can't pass the Senate.
We need to get that to the Senate, and the president then needs to show the leadership and come in and say, pass this proposal. It's the only thing that's made it through the House and can still get through the Senate in time to avoid a default before August 2nd. But for the president, if he wants to stay fixated on trying to raise the debt ceiling to get him beyond his re-election effort in 2012, he should not be putting his re-election ahead of the country. He ought to be focused on the country and working with everyone else to avoid default.
But you heard Harry Reid, the leader in the Senate, say the Boehner proposal is DOA, dead on arrival, in the Senate, and you've heard White House officials say they'll recommend to the president, even if it were to pass the Senate, and it doesn't look like it will, that he would veto it. So what do you do next to avert disaster for all of your constituents in Wyoming, indeed around the country, and so many people watching us around the world, if in fact the U.S. government defaults on its payments?
You know, the people of Wyoming don't want a default. I don't want a default. And there's a way to avoid default, and that's to adopt the Boehner proposal, get it through the House, and then have Harry Reid say to his members, we need to pass this because it's the only way we avoid default, and then have the president show some leadership. You know, the New York Times today, what did it say? It said the president is on the sidelines. The president needs to get in the game, show some leadership, say, I'm going to put the country first, I want to avoid default, and then endorse and sign into law the Boehner approach.
John Barrasso is the Republican senator from Wyoming. Appreciate it, Senator. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You might be happy to hear, by the way, that Paul Ryan, the Republican congressman from Wisconsin, the chairman of the Budget Committee, just walked into the whip's office, the Republican whip's office, and was overheard saying, I think it's coming together, meaning there might be a vote coming up tonight, and we'll see what happens.
Good news for the country.
I don't think the Speaker would allow a vote to come up unless he was assured that it would have the 216 votes necessary to pass it. Otherwise, it would be a huge embarrassment for him, for his Republican leadership as well. Senator Barrasso, thanks very much.